Joining us in this edition of the debate is journalist and Middle East expert Hafsa Kara-Mustapha, who joins us from London, and we have director of the Middle East Forum, Daniel Pipes, who joins us from Philadelphia. I'd like to welcome both of you. Let me start with you, Daniel Pipes. This war has entered its fourth day. Over 100 Palestinians have been killed. Yesterday, there was a UN session, the UN Chief Ban Ki-moon urging restraint on both sides, but placing condemnation equally on both Israel and Hamas. Is this really equal when it comes to look at the number of casualties and the types of casualties caused by F-16 bombs fired on Palestinians, and that close to half of them are women and children, one to be as young as 1 year old?
Well, actually, factual correction. Ban Ki-moon said the way to stop this is for Hamas to restrain itself. And I would agree with that. And I would say to Hamas, stop sending rockets into Israel, and the Israelis will stop responding. This was Hamas's initiation, and it's up to Hamas to stop it. Portraying misery in Gaza is irrelevant. It was the decision made by the leadership in Gaza to attack Israel starting a month ago and building up and up that has led to the Israeli response. Stop the attack, the Israelis will respond. Two other points. First, it is a little odd to be focusing so much on a handful of deaths when there are 150,000, some 60,000 deaths in Syria. That's where the real tragedy is, not in Gaza. 1,000 times more deaths, if not more. Secondly, the real news here is not that there's fighting between Hamas and Israel, which has taken place in 2006, in 2008, in 2012, and now in 2014. That's pretty routine. What is the real news here is that the Israelis have almost perfected their Iron Dome defensive shield so that the Hamas rockets are ineffectual. Every time one goes into a field, it lands in a field, but every time one goes to an inhabited area, it doesn't kill anybody because it gets smashed up in the air. This is a huge development. This means that the cheap rockets that Hamas has been relying on for all these years are no longer effective and are likely not to be effective into the future.
Well, Hafsa Kara-Mustapha, Daniel Pipes mentioned the reasons. Do you agree with that in terms of why Israel is attacking the Gaza Strip in the form and fashion that it is, that has resulted in these deaths?
I'm in utter shock hearing a fellow human being actually describe 100 deaths as actually irrelevant is beyond disgusting. I think it actually shows the nature of Israeli policy and its apologists, who are sadly in great numbers in the US administration and in America in general. I think that if we'd seen pictures of entire American families wiped out by bombings and actually calling it irrelevant, the entire planet would be in shock and utterly disgusted. But sadly, it's become a common narrative to hear Israeli apologists, Zionists, actually describe the life of what can only be described today as Untermensch, because that's precisely how the Israelis seem to view the Palestinians, just like the Nazis viewed the Jews of Europe as Untermensch, as human beings whose lives had no value, to actually describe it as irrelevant. But there's an important thing that actually Mr. Pipes said, which is that he acknowledges, funnily enough, that Hamas's rockets have absolutely no effect. So here we have a government that using the most sophisticated weapons against an unarmed population, recognizing that the arms used by Hamas have actually no effect, and still condoning the mass slaughter of a civilian population. Utterly shameful.
Daniel Pipes, do you have a response?
Yeah, Ms. Kara-Mustapha is chirping away about this and that. But my central point, let me get back to it, is that Hamas has brought this on the Gazan population. Hamas is responsible for these horrible deaths, which I agree are horrible, and these people are not Untermenschen. They're full human beings who deserve to live. Hamas is responsible for them.
Thank you.
If Hamas stopped, Israel would stop. Answer that. Answer that. Why doesn't Hamas stop? Why don't you call on Hamas to stop? I call on Hamas to stop.
I will answer
You
that.
call on Hamas to stop. And then let's see if the Israelis
Let me answer
stop
that.
or not. I guarantee you they will stop.
Go ahead. Hafsa Kara-Mustapha, go ahead.
Yes, I will answer that, because when Israel ends its occupation, its illegal occupation of Palestinian land, then maybe there will be no need for any attacks. Because let me tell you this, Mr. Pipes, and you're an academic and you're somebody who's knowledgeable, it is entrenched in international law to actually protect yourself from aggression and actually protect yourself from illegal occupation. So when Israel stops its aggression and its illegal occupation, then maybe it will be possible, the onus will then be put on Hamas to stop. But for the moment, the aggressor, the occupier, is the State of Israel.
Daniel Pipes.
I have news for you, Ms. Kara-Mustapha. I have hot news. In 2005, 9 years ago, the Israelis left Gaza completely. There is not a single Israeli citizen left, not a soldier left. Gaza is not occupied by any definition of the term. The Israelis pulled back. There's a wall between them. The Israelis want nothing to do with Gaza. Wake up! This has been 9 years. They don't occupy it.
Okay.
So now that we've established that the Israelis have gone for Gaza, why is Hamas attacking, and why don't you call on Hamas to stop? Just stop. No explanations. Just call on it to stop. I challenge you to call on Hamas to stop the attacks on
Let's
Israel.
get a response from Hafsa Kara-Mustapha. Go ahead.
I'm really starting to understand the reason for the word chutzpah, because frankly, there's utter chutzpah what I'm hearing, that Gaza is somewhat independent, it's free, it doesn't have a free airspace. Fishermen can't even go beyond 20 kilometers to fish for food in Gaza. The borders are closed up. They can't actually import or export any goods. They're entirely dependent on Israel and on the goodwill of the Egyptians. And we're being told that the Israelis have somehow left. This is absolutely ridiculous. So why even have debates? Why even have discussions? Why even discuss the two-state solution if there is no occupation? This is utterly scandalous to actually describe Gaza, or even the West Bank, for that matter, as somehow not occupied. The reason why Hamas is reacting with very little means, it has to be said, with almost farcical means, is because Palestine, the land of Palestine, Palestinian people, are occupied. They do not enjoy the same things that you and I enjoy, which is to have a free passport, which is to travel freely, which is to circulate easily across our land. When that will happen, that is when Hamas will be called upon to stop whatever it does to defend its population.
Daniel Pipes.
The key element in what you just said is the Israelis have closed their border to Hamas. Well, first of all, they haven't. There's a lot of food, a lot of fuel going there. But what responsibility does Israel have to provide, to provision the Gaza Strip? It has none. It has pulled back. It is not occupying. Are you going to tell me that there's a single Israeli in Gaza today? A single soldier? There is not one. Yeah, Gaza's hemmed in various ways, in part due to the Egyptian boycott of it, but it is not Israel occupying. Israel is not occupying. There was 20 months of no fighting until Hamas decided to shoot rockets at Israel. And sorry, Hamas, they're ineffectual because the Israelis are really clever and managed to find a mechanism to shoot down your rockets. So you haven't killed anybody. Sorry about that, Hamas, but you're not up to Israel's standards. So why don't you just stop this? Why don't you stop trying to kill Israelis? Why don't you give up? Why don't you try and develop Gaza into a proper territory with its own society and culture and polity and economics, instead of trying to kill the neighbors? Stop trying to kill the neighbors, and the neighbors will not have to defend themselves by taking defensive action, which means because you put your missiles and your military encampments in civilian areas, it means, unfortunately, harming civilians. But the key point is that the Israeli missiles are there to protect the civilians, and in Gaza, the civilians are there to protect the missiles. One is moral, one is immoral, and I am scandalized that you, a Western woman, would be defending an atrocious regime like that of Hamas in Gaza. How can you? Shame on you for doing such a thing. Shame on you for doing it in public as you were doing here.
Hafsa Kara-Mustapha.
First of all, I'm not a Western woman, so let's get that very straight. And shame, if the shame is on the person who's actually defending a defenseless population.
Like I do.
No, I'm defending a population that is being bombarded as we speak. I'm speaking, and first of all, please don't say you're Hamas. I have nothing to do with Hamas. I'm not associated with Hamas. What I do speak for, I try to speak for the defenseless people of Palestine who are being murdered as we speak. It is utterly shameful to hear people speak of their lives as irrelevant. But there I have to say one thing. I will agree with you on one thing when you say that Hamas and Israel are not on a par. That Israel is by far better than Hamas. Because yes, in terms of murdering and slaughtering, Israel is on a league of its own. It has been murdering and slaughtering Palestinians. In fact, it invaded Lebanon for 22 years illegally in violation of international law. It still occupies the Golan Heights. It occupied Sinai, and it's in violation of 65 UN resolutions. So yes, I would have to say that if you compared Hamas with Israel, with the terrorist state of Israel, because I think it's about time we call a spade, then I think it's fair to say that yes, there is absolutely no comparison between Hamas and the terrorist state of Israel, a state that was founded on terrorism and a state that continues to apply terrorism and slaughter and indiscriminately attack and murder women and children. And because, let's be honest, when we see it, Israel is very good at attacking Gaza. Why? Because it's essentially defenseless civilians. But hey, we remember in 2006 when they were faced with a proper militia group where there were really fighters facing them. Well, we didn't really see that Israeli soldiers showing up their best. But then again, yes, Hezbollah are fighters, unlike women and children that we're seeing blown up to pieces in Gaza.
But Daniel Pipes, there's a point there that Hafsa Kara-Mustapha made. If I may ask this, because I'd like to put this question, and you could respond to it too, is the fact that maybe it seems to the contrary of what you have said, Daniel Pipes, that maybe Netanyahu and his fellow decision makers and friends there actually don't want the status quo to be changed in the Gaza Strip. They want Hamas there. They like the way that Hamas plays into their hands. They're using Hamas maybe as a propaganda tool to continue their offensive, not only on the Gaza Strip, well, I should say to continue their siege on the Gaza Strip, but their offensive on the occupied territories regarding Palestinians, because it gives them a reason to continue what they're doing. Do you agree?
No, I don't. I think you're turning things upside down. The Israeli country, the country of Israel, is a modern Western democracy with rule of law, with a high-tech economy, with a very developed art scene, first-rate universities. These are modern Western people who are not particularly interested in maintaining an antediluvian, crude war with their neighbors. They have looked time and again to solve it, and they have done it by trying to give things to their neighbors, give them land, give them opportunities, so that the neighbors will leave them alone and go do their own business and cultivate their own gardens. The Israelis have not been very successful at this because their neighbors have over and over again turned against them and attacked them with conventional arms, attack them with terrorism, to attack them on television, attack them in many different ways. The Israelis would like to be left alone. Now, I keep coming back to the point that if Hamas would stop the attack, as it did in November 2012, followed by 20 months of pretty much steady peace, then the Israelis would stop as well. So I challenge Ms. Kara-Mustapha to call on Hamas to stop bombarding Israel. Now, if Israel then goes on and continues the fight, I will say that the Israelis are doing wrong. But if the Israelis then stop and there is no longer fighting, then I think the point will be proven that Hamas started on June 11th and will end when Hamas ends it, whatever that date is. So Hamas, stop the rocketing. Ms. Kara-Mustapha, I challenge you to call on Hamas to stop sending rockets against Israeli targets.
Ms. Kara-Mustapha, go ahead.
Let me ask you one thing, Mr. Pipes. Is Hamas attacking Sweden? Is it bombarding Greece? Is it bombarding Spain, perhaps? Or maybe, I don't know, Turkey? No, they're not. You know why? Because Turkey, because Greece, because Spain, because Sweden are not occupying Palestine. The bottom line is it is occupation that is the problem. And I think you need to acknowledge that. It's an internationally acknowledged fact. I mean, we wouldn't be even discussing this. There wouldn't be a debate in the UN. There wouldn't be all these talks between various countries if actually there was no occupation. So I think it's fair to say that if you're challenging me to ask or to urge Hamas to stop, I will put it to you. I will urge you to tell Israel to stop occupying land that doesn't belong to it. Because let me remind you one thing, Mr. Pipes. You asked me if you said I was a Western woman. I'm not a Western woman. What I am is a woman that comes from a country that was occupied for many, many years. And because my people consistently resisted occupation, I am now a free woman, able to travel wherever I want, coming to places like this, challenging people like you, because occupation is a disease. Colony is a disease. Having said that, I'm comfortable in one thing. There is one thing that all colonial powers have in common, and that's that they all have a sell-by date. And you do well to be on the good side of history, because one day, and sooner rather than later, the state of Israel will come to its logical conclusion, and you'll be speaking here in vain about a situation that will no longer be. But please remember, at this point, there are people, human beings, women, children, maybe like your wife, like your daughter, like your sisters, who are being blown up to pieces by a Zionist entity that has absolutely no regard for human life.
Daniel Pipes?
So I have asked you 3 times. I've asked you 3 times to call on Hamas to stop. 3 times you've not done it. So we will conclude. You're unwilling to call on Hamas to stop the missile attacks. As for occupation, we've already gone over this. There is no occupation. There's not a single Israeli in Gaza. You've acknowledged this by your silence on the topic, so let's not talk about occupation. Hamas seeks to destroy the state of Israel. You have just said it yourself. Israel has a date by which time it'll expire, and Hamas is doing its best to make that happen. You are colluding with a vicious terrorist movement to end the existence of a peaceable, law-abiding, modern country with the arts, with the sciences, and you are party to that. And if we're talking about what's shameful, I think that's shameful. I would like to see Gaza prosper. I would like to see Gaza peaceful and cultivating the arts and the like. But it's not going to happen so long as there is a terrorist organization with an Islamist agenda to destroy Israel that dominates it. And you
How can
are
it
party to
prosper
it.
when
You
it
may not be a
doesn't
member of
have a
Hamas,
right
but
to
you are a
its
party
borders?
to it because you are supporting it on this program right now. You are party to the evil of Hamas. And I am ashamed of you for doing that.
Hafsa Kara-Mustapha.
And you're not ashamed that Israelis are blowing up women and children. You're not ashamed that the Palestinians have no right to circulate, to travel freely. You're not ashamed that the fishermen can't even go beyond 20 kilometers to provide food for their families. You're not ashamed that the Palestinians don't have any right on their airspace. You're not ashamed that they can't leave their country without previous accord from the Israeli authorities. You're not ashamed that actually, if they weren't occupied, they wouldn't have to trade in shekels. But hey, guess what? Gaza trades in shekels. Why would it trade in shekels if it wasn't illegally occupied by Israel? You're not ashamed to actually state that Israel is an occupying force and that as we speak, it is actually carrying out a mass slaughter of human beings who are being caught in a crossfire because Benjamin Netanyahu, a far-right terrorist leader, casually slaughters people with total disregard. And he does that because he has the support of people like yourself in powerful countries. But you know what? All situations, no one stays powerful for eternity, and nobody stays weak for eternity.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you very much. Journalist and Middle East expert Hafsa Kara-Mustapha talking there from London. And thank you very much, Daniel Pipes.
Thank you.
He's the director of the Middle East Forum who spoke to us from Philadelphia. We'd like to hear from you. Do send us your comments, newsroom@presstv.ir, and tell us what you think about this program. From Mikhail and the entire team in the capital, Tehran, it's goodbye.